Do the San Francisco 49ers have the best roster in football? We're examining the state of the 49ers roster today on the Locked On NFL Scouting Podcast.
You are Locked On NFL Scouting with the Draft Dudes, your daily podcast for NFL and college football scouting. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's better than this? It's guys being dudes here on the Locked On NFL Scouting Podcast. We're the Draft Dudes. I'm Joe Marino from Locked On Bills. He's Kyle Crabbs from Locked On Dolphins. And we are your NFL experts here with you daily to talk team building across the league on the Locked On NFL Scouting Podcast with the Draft Dudes, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Want to issue a big thank you, shout out, and welcome to our everydayers. Those of you who make Locked On NFL Scouting your first listen every day, we appreciate y'all being here very, very much. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Make every moment more. Right now, new customers can get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 bet. That's $150 with any winning $5 bet. Just visit FanDuel.com/lockedon to get started.
Joe, how's your weekend?
Weekend was good, Kyle. As we teased to each other in the pre-show, 2-kid life in the weekend is a little different ball game.
Yes, don't plan on doing anything else.
Right. Just hanging out with the kids and the fam.
Yeah.
Which is amazing and stressful at the same time.
Yes. Especially when they're young. You're still new to 2-kid life. So
oh yeah, when does it get normal? When does it
I don't know. I'll let you know.
Oh man. How was your weekend, Kyle Crabbs?
It was fine. Same you know what, different pot.
Well,
so we're gonna get into the 49ers today. That's the deal.
Yeah. Welcome to NFC West week here on Locked On NFL Scouting.
That's right. So we did AFC North last week. Was very pleased to see everyone in the comments on the Friday show was very upset with how we ranked pretty much every position group. So you have that to look forward to in the NFC West, but here's how it works. Joe and I look at each individual roster throughout the course of a day, and we put the players on the rosters within the division into buckets. Cornerstones, quality starters, adequate starters, quality depth, replacement level players, incomplete evaluations, rookies, practice squad caliber players, and non-NFL caliber players. We get to the end of the week, and we take the division that we did throughout the course of the week. Today, San Francisco. Tomorrow will be the Rams. Wednesday will be the Seahawks, and then Thursday will be the Cardinals. And then on Friday, we do a tier maker where we take each category that we grade the rosters in, and it's not adjusted for positional value or your optimum personnel groupings. It's just your quarterback room. How do we stack the 4 quarterback rooms in the West? How do we stack the 4 offensive lines in the West, top to bottom, and do that on Friday? So it will be fun. It's fun for us as long as we don't read the comments.
Yeah, Bengals fans, big mad that we didn't say that they have the best skill group in the AFC North when they literally have nothing after Jamar Chase
and 2 players. Right.
So,
and that was the whole conversation. We put the disclaimer down there too, like, y'all are going to run 11 personnel. There's teams that are going to run different personnel groups and have more running backs and more tight ends. And Mike Gesicki, though.
Appreciate the latest Bengals fan that came on there and said, as a Bengals fan, I appreciate the setup to let us know why you stacked them the way that they did. You got the best 2 receivers in the division. Okay, that was last week. The 49ers
today
take center stage, Kyle Crabbs, as we get into the offensive discussion here. And I think what stands out the most to me when looking at the 49ers offense is an absolutely loaded group of offensive skill players. I mean, disclaimer, probably going to be number 1 when we stack these up on Friday. But when you have a pair of receivers like Deebo Samuel and Brandon Aiyuk, and right now we are assuming that both of those players are going to be on the San Francisco 49ers this year.
Ricky Persall.
You have a Jauan Jennings, who has been a very nice
Ricky Persall
player in terms of some big moments and the physicality, the yards after catch, he's his leverage winner. A first-round pick added to the mix.
Thank you.
In Ricky Persall, who Kyle Crabbs is over the moon about.
King.
You had a very high grade on him, and it's always redeeming when you feel like you stick your neck out for a guy, and then an NFL team picks him like higher than people expect.
I got a lot of sass about who Ricky Persall is and is not, and his age.
That was me and Jack Campbell last year. You as well with Jack Campbell. It's like, okay, he's a top 20 pick. You're the one that needs to look internal
now. Don't get mad. And then you have George Kittle, Christian McCaffrey, Elijah Campbell's been a productive player, another promising rookie that I think would be a home run fit in this scheme, and Isaac Arendo at running back. Braden Willis is kind of a multi-tool, really.
He's coming.
You know, he had some good tape at Oklahoma. I would not be surprised if he does come on pretty strong. And they made a pretty reasonable investment in Cameron Latu as well. So, this is the Shanahan. There's now subsects of the Shanahan tree, right? And
there's some clear themes.
I think you look at Green Bay with all the youth at wide receiver that they went after and the tight ends that they drafted early, and now they're paying Josh Jacobs. You have San Francisco with everybody that we just went through. You have Miami over in the AFC.
Heard about them.
Who just added Odell Beckham to Jalen Waddle and Tyreek Hill and Jonnu Smith at running back, and just drafted another third-round running back to add to their mix with their speed with Devon Achane and Raheem Mostert. And like
Houston.
That's Houston with Slowick. Yeah. But I don't know. I do feel like Houston feels a little different because they've also invested in the offensive line to a degree. Right. And maybe that's because they had a rookie quarterback and they really wanted to get that settled in. But like all of this conversation with San Francisco, and the big question with them is beyond Trent Williams. Yeah. What is the ceiling, and subsequently what is the floor of everybody that they have on the offensive line, and when will it matter? Because for many of the games that they will play this season, it won't matter because of the scheme that they run.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think these offensive linemen outside of Trent Williams kind of work for them, but I would be very surprised if you looked at them as the types of guys that would start for even close to half the teams in the NFL, right? Like Aaron Banks, Jake Brendel, Colton McKivitch as kind of just fill-in players, in my opinion, that are lacking in talent. And I thought you saw that show up in the Super Bowl. I mean, even Trent Williams didn't play well in the Super Bowl, where you just kind of saw some of that D-line talent for Kansas City beat up on these guys. And when they face those types of teams, I think that's where you see some of the issues, where they like, again, they work for this system in most of the time, but sometimes you feel like they can be overmatched at the point of attack. And I thought you saw that in the Super Bowl.
I don't want to do too much of the offensive line conversation now because I know we're going to do that later. We're 8 minutes and change into the show, and we have not mentioned Brock Purdy's name yet. That's going to be a great feeling for 49ers fans when last offseason it was Mr. Irrelevant, Brock Purdy. What's he really going to be? Is his elbow going to be healthy? Is Trey Lance going to get a chance to? And it's just like, no, Brock Purdy's the guy here in San Francisco for the next couple of years, for sure. He put that doubt to rest. And I still think there's some times with Brock where the process doesn't match the results. Like he has some really wild plays and wild moments, and he makes it work for him at times. But I thought you saw an inspired effort from Brock, particularly in the postseason, with extended plays and utilizing his legs. And that is an element of his game that you're starting to see him get a little bit of a better grasp on. And I have him down as a quality starter at the quarterback position for San Francisco, which is a big win. Now, you can make the argument, and I'm living this firsthand, if you transplanted Brock Purdy and put him in different environments, would he be the same player? The answer is no, but that doesn't matter because this is the situation that he's in. Yeah. And this is the opportunity with who he's going to play with and the coaches that he's going to play with and the scheme. So Brock Purdy, as a part and a member of the San Francisco 49ers, yes, I think he is a quality star.
I'll share some thoughts on Brock Purdy on the other side of it, so be sure to stick with us. It's winner take all time in the NBA and the NHL, and FanDuel's giving you a shot to bring home a huge win of your own. Right now, new customers can get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 bet. It's $150 to bet on spreads, money lines, player props, and more. Just visit FanDuel.com/lockedon and make every playoff shot count. FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook.
So Brock Purdy thoughts?
Yeah, I just want to be honest about it. And I've said this before, but now that we have like a concentrated audience of 49ers fans most likely today, I think that people should and hopefully could appreciate that Brock Purdy is just kind of a tough player to assess in the NFL. I agree with everything that you said. There's no doubt about it that Brock Purdy for the San Francisco 49ers is a quality starting quarterback. He runs the scheme. He's got great second reaction plays. But at the same time, there's limitations, right? There's a reason he was Mr. Irrelevant. And it was hard to watch him at Iowa State at times and realize that, like, forecast this to the NFL and think to yourself, man, like this is going to be a guy. This is going to be a guy that's going to play in consecutive NFC championship games or be a big reason why they get there and then, be in the Super Bowl. And I think that speaks to the situation and what Shanahan's been able to unlock out of these quarterbacks. I think he's got great skill players around him that helps him make the plays that he does. But like, it's hard for me to say, okay, put him on a different team and he's close to this level of production. To the point that you've already made, that doesn't matter. This is the situation that he's in. And I just wonder, like, I know that there are times where you feel like, okay, he can go haymaker for haymaker when he has to in those big games. But then, like, I feel like there's other times where, like, man, I don't know if he's got it. But in the overall grand scheme of things, man,
isn't this part of like chasing utopia though?
100,000,000%. And I can respect that a ton. Like, not everybody gets to get Patrick Mahomes, right? He's the unicorn of unicorns out there. Like, not everybody gets to have these like premier big
you could say Josh Allen's name.
Well, I didn't want to get into there's a whole list, right?
We're in the Bills fan,
right? But there's you go Lamar Jackson, Josh, and you're like, oh, who you didn't say this guy, right? So you just say Patrick Mahomes and other unicorn truck quarterbacks, right? And yeah, they're like, that's definitely a thing. But like, I think this team can win the Super Bowl with Brock Purdy, but it's like,
yeah,
man, like
they just need to not play Kansas City, and I think they would win one.
Well, that's a problem for a lot of teams right now, Kyle Crabbs.
Right.
We're damn ruining the league, Patrick Mahomes. Anyways.
But I think that waters down the perception of this is a quality starter quarterback who is in a perfect scheme fit, because it's like, yeah, but he can't beat 15. And okay, like, join the club. I don't know. Like,
right. Well, that's the whole league right now through a different lens is trying to figure this out.
Correct.
And like, here's the thing. Maybe it's less about your quarterback. Maybe it's about your defense, right? Like, they lost in the Super Bowl to Todd Bowles in Tampa Bay, right? Not because Tom Brady was unbelievable in the game. It's because that defense had the right stuff.
Mm-hmm. And
you don't beat yourself on offense. Like, and that's what's hard, where I think everybody goes in these games against Kansas City and says, man, you got to outscore them. Nah, I think you got to stop them. I think you got to win situational football and stop them.
Well, I think that's what's frustrating for San Francisco, is because both times that they did play Kansas City, they look like they had that dialed in.
Right.
They gave up 21 points in the fourth quarter the first time they played.
What was that? The first half of the Super Bowl. Kansas City was falling. Yeah. San Francisco outplayed them, but then they were falling all over themselves in the situational moments. Like, they should have had a commanding lead at halftime. Anyways, we're talking about
this very difficult roster conversation, but you know whose fault it's not?
Brock Purdy.
Brock Purdy's.
Yeah. Okay. Shall we transition to the defensive side of the football? What stands out most to you?
Cornerstones on all three levels. Good place to be. You got Nick Bosa, Javon Hargrave, Fred Warner, Talanoa Hufanga, obviously coming back from an injury this past season. Him and Dre Greenlaw are looming as potential big interruptions to your continuity as far as like a lot of your impact players on defense. They've kind of reworked the rest of the defensive line with Malik Collins and Leonard Floyd and bringing in Yetur Gross-Matos and Jordan Elliott. And so they've What I admire about what they've done defensively is in the midst of some of their big contract approach that they've had in collecting talent, I think they've done a pretty good job of segueing and transitioning talent. So I look at some of the new faces, and Devondre Campbell coming in as the Dre Greenlaw insurance policy. Not really an insurance policy. You know you're going to need him. He's going to have to play.
Right.
Malik Collins in for Eric Armstead. Is it a step down? Maybe a little bit, but I think it's certainly a feasible player to put into that spot. I think about Leonard Floyd added to the mix for them as a pass rusher. And I think they've done a pretty admirable job of finding talent on a budget that you feel like is going to come in and be at least an adequate level starter for you or better.
Yeah, I would agree with that, especially on the edge where it felt like that guy opposite of Nick Bosa. They've been trying to kind of get that stabilized and threw a lot of darts at the board. Leonard Floyd's been as consistent of a sack producer as you'll find over the last 5 years in the NFL. Like literally very, very consistent. And he played through some injuries in Buffalo last year. And I thought the Bills did a good job, and I think San Francisco will do a good job of making sure that he's not a 900 snap guy anymore, right? I think you play him in that 500 to 600 range, and I think you're going to still get a lot of sack production out of him. So hopefully you can, you got an investment in Yetur Gross-Matos, so like hopefully that winds up being better than he was in Carolina for them. Hopefully Drake Jackson can kind of take a step as some juice off the edge and some speed. But I think that's a reasonable plan for Leonard Floyd to elevate what they've gotten out of some other investments at that position opposite of Bosa. I wanted to give a big shout out to Javarius Ward at corner, where I feel like just quietly becoming rock solid corner in the NFL. They paid him a decent contract coming out of Kansas City a few years ago. And I thought from year 1 to year 2, he got even better. And like, I think this corner situation in general for San Francisco is really solid. Like Lenore kind of coming along as a slot player for them. Renardo Green is a second-round pick, but then I think they have really good depth. And like Avery Thomas last year had to play and look good down the stretch at times. Isaac Yiadom, who I thought was a good depth player for the Saints. Rocky Sin feels like he's not latching anywhere. Signing. Right, but like as a depth corner, like I feel like this corner room has a top-end guy in Ward, young talent, stable veteran depth. Like Lenore's coming along in the slot. I really kind of like how this corner situation's all together coming together for San Francisco.
Yeah, I think Renardo Green is a really exciting addition. When past couple of years, when it's been Ambry Thomas and Diamador Lenore, and you're like, okay, like is one of those guys gonna make the next step for you? And I think Renardo Green and his aggressiveness and physicality, and he tackles well, and that's a theme. And we keep talking about these back sevens that can tackle, right? We alluded to it all week last week about guys that can tackle in space. And obviously, when healthy, this is one of the best, if not the best, linebacker duo in football. But then you have Hufanga. He's a heat-seeking missile. You have Ji'Ayir Brown, who one of the best qualities that he has as a player coming out of Penn State as a third-round pick from last year and got some run this year is the tackling.
Malik.
You're right. Malik Mustafa is another sledgehammer-type tackler, and Renardo Green, I think, is just a continuation of that. So I think that is where you take the disruptiveness of the pieces up front, and then you have good tacklers who are athletic behind it with good coaching, and that's a mix that's going to have you playing good ball late in the year. And I expect that even for San Francisco with the injuries that they have, I still have very high expectations for the unit as a whole.
Kyle, I have an X factor for the San Francisco 49ers defense this year. And I like this collection of talent a lot. But if I think that there's something that might be missing, it's run stopping ability up front. I think Nick Bosa is phenomenal at everything that he does. But I look at kind of the rest of this group. Even Hargrave, who's he's a better pass rusher at this point in his career than he is a run defender. Malik Collins, not a guy that's very stout in terms of anchor up front. Leonard Floyd's a lean defensive end that's more of a slashing style. Now, don't discredit his ability to set edges, but like certainly not what he's known for. The Bills really limited his run defense snaps last year. So love the linebackers, but I think that in this type of, they're going to play even front, up the field type defense. I think it's going to be really important for them to figure out their run defense and not allow that to be a problem for them. And like what is Brandon Staley's influence going to be on this defense, right? Like that's another thing to be mindful of. So obviously Shanahan felt some type of way about Steve Wilkes and dismissed him, and things got goofy in the Super Bowl, right, with the timeouts and all that.
Right.
But how this team adjusts to some new coaching on defense and then how they stop the run, I think is the big X factor for that side of the ball.
I think it's fair to point out. I would also say, if they want a nose, they're probably going to have an opportunity to bring somebody in, right?
Yeah.
Because I think that's the thing that is missing here is even the depth guys of Kevin Givens and Jordan Elliott and Kalia Davis,
right. Athleticism more than stout. Yeah.
Go ahead and find yourself a bowling ball guy. Like, you probably can still find yourself a bowling ball type of guy if you wanted to add that into your mix. You mentioned this not that long ago, but Brian Moan's still out there. What does he have left in the tank?
Right.
But go ahead and sign him. He's been in the league for a couple of years. Came in 2019, I think. And when you get through 53-man roster cuts, a space eater type is probably not going to be that hard to find in the grand scheme of things if you want it. So I think if I look at the silver lining to the very valid point that you bring up as far as the strengths and weaknesses of the player, maybe you get more Yetur Gross-Matos on early downs opposite Leonard Floyd and rotate and spell him with Drake Jackson, get a nice rotation opposite Nick Bosa, get yourself a nose tackle and see what you're able to put together as a result.
All right, folks, we're going to tie a ribbon on the San Francisco 49ers discussion on the other side of it, so be sure to stick with us. The NFL schedule is here. There are so many high-profile games that I'm sure you're going to want to attend. If you're a 49ers fan, I know you got a bunch of those this coming season. Well, if you want to get to some games, check out Game Time. Game Time is the fast and easy way to buy tickets for all the sports, music, comedy, and theater events near you. The app is awesome. They give you last-minute ticket specials, flash deals. Sometimes you just log in and get a great deal on a ticket. They give you all-in prices, which I absolutely love. So that way, when you look at the prices, it's the price you pay at checkout. There's no surprise additional fees that are coming. It's an all-in price plus a seat view. You got to love this. They really do take the guesswork out of buying tickets. So check it out, Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off. Download the Game Time app today. Last-minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed.
Man, you wanna feel old for a minute?
I do, every day I do for some reason. Why don't you go ahead and give me Monday, May 20th reason?
I'm sitting here looking at available interior defensive linemen in free agency, courtesy of Over the Cap. You know whose name I see here? Tyson Alualu. You remember Tyson Alualu?
Yeah. Former first rounder, right?
Top 10 overall pick in the 2010 NFL draft with the Jaguars. Was on Detroit's practice squad last year and is available to be signed as a 37-year-old veteran player. I remember him getting drafted like it was yesterday.
Yeah, surprise first rounder, right? Some people were not expecting that.
Not even surprise first rounder, surprise top 10, right? Everybody was like, whoa. They went where?
Well, as a fan of the Bills who drafted Dante Whitner in the top 10, I was kind of conditioned. Listen, we don't give him any accolades. We're not big Dante Whitner fans. But there was like this stretch where it wasn't like the surprise first round picks. It was like, who's the rando top 10 guy?
Right.
Tyson Alualu, one of those guys. Yeah.
So we alluded to the offensive line conversation earlier in the show in the first segment. And I do think that is where there's a couple of depth players on defense, like a Yetur Gross-Matos, about what his appeal is as a player. But the entire coming to consensus conversation that you and I have had as we've kind of settled on where we sit with San Francisco is with the offensive line, because as you said, and I said this last week, and I'll probably say it every time we come up with an offensive line that we have some questions with. This is the unit where the sum of the whole is more important than the sum of the individual parts. But I do think you look at some of the individual parts, and it is fair to question, is there more ceiling to be found elsewhere? Is there more impact to be had elsewhere? Why do they feel that way? Why did San Francisco play the Super Bowl the way that the Super Bowl happened and say, we'll add Dominic Puny in the third round?
Third round, yeah.
And that's it. We're good. And we'll bring back John Feliciano, who kind of latched on with us and found lightning in a bottle. We're totally cool with Jake Brendel, with the questions that we have with him as at the center position and all the. I think he had 12 penalties his first year as a starter in San Francisco, and then this past year, I think he had like 30 plus pressures allowed against him in pass protection. Aaron Banks and Spencer Buford, they've been like trying to figure those guys out for a couple of years as mid-round draft picks. But then there's the whole offensive line development versus college guys and that whole challenging dynamic. And you don't want to give up on young guys too quickly. So there's just a lot there that I think makes it challenging for San Francisco. And thankfully they do have Trent Williams as kind of this pillar piece. But if you told me that you had Aaron Banks or Jake Brendel or Colton McKivitz, any of those guys in a quality depth, and said, ideally, this guy's maybe not a starter, like individually, I could see why that would be an argument that you would have based off of them in isolation.
But that's 3/5 of your starting offensive line right now.
Right.
I think your best chance for some ceiling here is probably Puny. I mean, obviously, he's a third-round pick. I liked him a good bit coming out of Kansas. I would kind of be hopeful that he can be your starting right tackle soon. I don't know if that's this year or next year.
You think tackle for him?
Yeah, I think you play some tackle. Or I mean, obviously, I think you can upgrade some of the guard positions as well. And I know that you have flexibility with Feliciano, who could play all three spots on the interior. So I don't know, man.
They got to be really excited about how Feliciano came in and played.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah,
I thought he was the best interior guy that they had once he kind of got settled in there.
He did, and the versatility's there, and I think schematically it just kind of works for him. I think when you ask him to, I mean, look at some of the. I mean, I just remember him in Buffalo, and it just felt like playing with a quarterback like Josh Allen that was going to stress your offensive line a little bit with not being a quick trigger guy, right? Like, and force him to protect for longer. That it's going to cause some issues. And then he felt like he was just very, very aggressive as a run blocker and didn't stay latched. But I think he's come under control and was a really good player for them. And he's one of their answers. But like your best two offensive linemen are Trent Williams and John Feliciano. Like those guys are well on the wrong side of 30.
Yeah, I think there's some long-term questions for sure.
Yeah.
But I do think the scheme and what they do, and there's a couple snippets from a Chris Forrester wide zone clinic that's up on YouTube, and it's really enlightening to hear him. He's the offensive line coach in San Francisco. Kind of go into detail about the why of that system and how they present everything to be the same until it's not, and the detail-oriented nature of your head and hand placement, whether it's inside zone or outside zone, and you want to make sure that you're not tipping what you're doing. So a lot of the run game stuff that's been so successful with this scheme is really boiled down to the finer details. And I would guess that the continuity there is important because the more you're in it, the more a lot of those details become second nature-ish. So there's a ceiling versus floor conversation, and they quite evidently are comfortable with the floor, and they're hoping that the ceiling and the floor is raised with more time on task. And Brendel, now 2 seasons as a starter. McKivitz coming into his second season as a starter in this scheme. Feliciano coming into his second season as a starter in this scheme. So I guess if you were looking for the why of what the decisions were and the how it gets better, I think that's probably where my mind would go.
Want to shout out the franchise cornerstones that Kyle and I have for the San Francisco 49ers. Trent Williams at left tackle, George Kittle at tight end, Christian McCaffrey at running back, Brandon Aiyuk at wide receiver, Javon Hargrave at defensive tackle, Nick Bosa, defensive end, Fred Warner at linebacker, Talanoa Hufanga at safety. Folks, there won't be teams that have that many. That's going to be double most of teams in the NFL.
Yeah, I think we did that distribution last year, and I think there was only 5 teams that had more than 6.
Yeah. Healthy.
So it's a very healthy group of pillar players for the San Francisco 49ers, and we'll get into the rest of this division starting tomorrow. I'm Kyle Crabbs. He is Joe Marino. We are Locked On NFL Scouting. We hope you guys enjoyed today's episode. You can find us on YouTube or wherever you listen to your favorite podcast. Make it a great rest of your day. We're out of here.